Hello everyone, welcome to Integrated Math 2 with Mr. Schultz. Please make sure your information is in the top left and right hand corners. We're going to do kind of a I would say this before 2-2. It's parallel lines and a transversal, or why did the transversal cross the road? So when we have two lines, so let's draw that out. Now let's pretend that these are parallel. And you have a line that crosses them, that's a transversal. A line that crosses two lines, and the two lines are parallel. Now, there's going to be a lot of theorems associated with this idea, this concept, this very difficult concept of the line crosses two parallel lines. That's it. Well, first off, if a transversal crosses two parallel lines, then, well, forget that. So forget about the two parallel lines. Let's talk about a linear pair. So a linear pair is a pair of adjacent angles formed when two lines intersect. So that looks like this. That's like the top one right here, 4 and 1. We're going to say, hey, look, this 4 right there and this 1 right here. 4, the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 1 is equal to 180 degrees. It forms a line. Same with 8 and 3 right here. 8 and 3 added together, the measures added together would equal 180 degrees. Also 4 and 8. They form a linear pair. Anytime, and the nice little trick to do it is like, if you just put your finger on the solid, well, you can't really do it on the computer. But if we went like this, and we cover it up with our finger, and we're like, oh, that makes a line. That's a linear pair. Now, for the most part, we can assume if it makes a line, it's a linear pair. Let's go on. Now, the next one. If a transversal crosses two parallel lines, well, forget that as well. We're going to put vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent. What does this mean? Well, this means if we have two lines, we can go across in through the vertex right here. The measure of angle 1 will equal the measure of angle 8. The measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 8. And we can also say, hey, the measure of angle 4 is equal to the measure of angle 3. How do we know this? Because they are vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. Well, Mr. Schultz, why are you saying the measure? Well, this is like the statement on congruency. Technically, we'd say angle 1 is congruent to angle 8. And then we'd say, hey, the definition of congruence means, hey, the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 8. It's like this weird way of saying it. Like we can say they're congruent, it's equal, but we don't say it's equal because they're not exactly the same thing. Like the values are the same thing. If I had two $20 bills right here, poor Mr. Schultz here doesn't have two $20 bills to show you, they're not equal, they're equal in value. Meaning they're congruent. All right, let's finally get to this idea of when a transversal crosses two parallel lines. So, alternate interior angles. So, if a transversal crosses two parallel lines, then the alternate interior angles are congruent. Well, what does this mean? Well, they're equal in value. And what is alternate? That means like we can say, hey, inside, interior. And we're going to go like this. Hey, look, this 8, angle 8 is going to be congruent to angle 2 because they're on alternate sides of the transversal and they're on the inside. That's the alternate interior. Now there's one more besides that. There's another pair that are congruent. So I'd say angle 8 is congruent to angle 2. I'd also say, hey, look, this angle 7 is congruent to angle 3. Well, let's erase that. Let's put it down a little bit so that we can talk about that. Angle 7 is congruent to angle 3. So we'd also talk about like the definition of congruency and say the measure of angle 8 is equal to the measure of angle 2, and that the measure of angle 7 is equal to the measure of angle 3. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Maybe later, but not now. Let's go on. Now, we could go into this and go into like 5 dozen versions of like, if a transversal crosses 2 parallel lines, then blah, blah, blah. If a transversal cross, and there's like so many different ones. We're going to talk about like, we could say, okay, alternate corresponding angles. And we talk about like which ones are congruent, which ones add up to 180 degrees. But we can break this down and just talk about a bare few, because once you know a few of them, you only need to know one path in order to figure it out. And these are the easiest ones that I've figured out so far. So if a transversal crosses 2 parallel lines, then the corresponding angles are congruent. What does this mean? Okay, this means that the measures of the corresponding angles are equal in value. So that means, hey, look, top right. What's the number for top right? Please say it right now. It's going to be 1. Okay, let's go down to the line M. What's the measure angle name of the top right? Okay, so I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle what? Because top right, top right. I know that angle, let's say 8. I don't need to go through every single one of these, but these are corresponding. Angle 8 is congruent to angle what? 5. Let's just do it. Top left, angle 7. Now I'm putting these dashes. Now this means like no dash is congruent to no dash. 1 dash is congruent to 1 dash. So 2 dash, angle 7 would be congruent to angle 4. And then finally, 1, 2, 3. Angle 6 is congruent to which one? Angle 3. All right. Hold up. So we could talk about all the different ones, but if you just memorize these few, then you're good. Corresponding angles are congruent. That lets you go up. Let's go from like, if you know 6, you want to know 3. Well, once you know 6, you know 3. Once you know 2, you know 1. Well, let's say you want to get to 4. Okay, if you know 6, you can do the vertical angle to get to 7 because they're equal to each other because they're vertical angles. And then 7 is equal to 4 because of corresponding angles. Well, if it deals with the interior, you can simply go, okay, these two are equal. But if all else fails, vertical angles, all else fails and you're like, I'm stuck. Just remember, hey, if the two angles form a line, that's a linear pair. And those two added together would be equal to 180 degrees because a line has 180 degrees. All right, guys, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys in class. Bye, everybody.